All right, welcome to the SnydeReport. I am your host, Gary Snyder. My guest today is the, I guess, lovable mayor of Hammond. Would you use lovable?
I don't hear that one very often, but I usually draw a reaction. It's not lovable very often, but my wife loves me, so
That's all that counts sometimes, right?
that's right. That's right.
Hey, I wanted to have you on. Obviously, you're the mayor, a Democrat mayor in the state of Indiana, so that's worth something. And we want to get your reaction. You were recently the guest speaker at the Allen County Democrat dinner.
Right.
And what really caught my attention was you mentioned that ideological purity is basically a way to lose in Indiana. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Why don't you
I said
just
that,
go ahead?
I think that the Democratic Party, we're sometimes tougher on our own candidates than the Republicans are. Some of the people in the Democratic Party now came from the Republican Party, like our last governor's candidate, for instance. Some people in the Democratic Party came here because we're the big tent party, and I think we need to act like the big tent and be more welcoming. And even though some of our candidates don't have the perfect background, sort of like a litmus test type of attitude, and I don't think that's a healthy attitude for a party to take. I mentioned it in my speech that day. I pointed out that I was a Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate, and I didn't have the perfect credentials to run for that office, according to some people. In fact, I mentioned a story about how a friend of mine's kid wouldn't vote for me because he didn't agree with my stance on Gaza, and he refused to vote for me because of that, and which is in effect voting for Todd Young, who shares nothing with this voter at all, no common interest at all. So, I think it was a good message to give to the party.
We spent a lot of time together when I ran for Congress up here. And I experienced a lot of the same issues because I used to be a Republican. And
Yes,
yet
sir.
my opponent at the time could not be a worse person or a worse candidate or a worse U.S. senator now. But, we had a certain portion of the electorate up in the 3rd district that just refused to vote for me and would literally go vote for an independent or not vote at all.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, is the attitude that this person isn't the perfect representation of a Democrat, and because of that, I'm not going to support that person. And what they are doing in effect is supporting the incumbent, who, like you said, shares very little in common at all with the voter. So it's really a losing strategy, and it's something that I talked about that, and I also talked about people in our party like to take the moral high ground, and I love the moral high ground. But I would rather win elections than take the moral high ground. I think it's more important to win elections than to be on the moral high ground. And it's the litmus test, it's the moral high ground. I think we have to eliminate that from our vocabulary in Indiana.
Why don't you just take a second and maybe describe to our listeners what you mean by the moral high ground?
I hear a lot of people taking positions on issues that aren't popular with the voters. And they say, well, I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. It's not a winning strategy with voters, but it's the right thing to do. So I feel comfortable about it. And I'm here to say that it's our job is to win elections first and foremost. The moral high ground is the loser strategy. It's a loser strategy. Our job is to win elections, not to be right, not to be on the moral high ground. And sometimes we get persuaded that, even though it's not popular, this is where we need to be. And absolutely, in the Indiana Democratic Party, it's our job to win elections. It's not our job to be popular. We have to win elections.
Did you see that in a lot of candidates when you ran? I did. Did you see it in a lot of candidates? And you can just look at a candidate or look at their Facebook page or their social media, and right away, people in rural Indiana are not going to vote for you.
Yeah, the moral high ground, it seems like a lot of the younger Democrats are the ones most likely to take the moral high ground. And my rationale in that is a lot of the younger Democrats have never seen us win in Indiana, whereas I'm 56 years old. I know that it's possible for Indiana Democrats to win in this state. And so maybe for me, it's a little different because I know we can win. Whereas if you're a young Democrat and that's all you've seen is GOP rule in Indiana, maybe they think that the moral high ground's the only thing they could take. But it's definitely a losing strategy in politics to say I'm on the moral high ground. It's just our job is to be winning elections, to be on the right side of the issues as far as the majority of Hoosiers feel. That's what we got to start doing.
I see that a lot with Republicans. They lose their morals, if you will, for the power. And once they have the power, once they have the power, because the power to me for Republicans is the ultimate goal. Whereas we want to be ideologically pure or have the moral high ground. And that's why we are a super minority in this state.
I agree with you, Gary. You and I always got along really well because we said that we're both veterans. You know, we both see the world very similarly. By the way, I was mixed. My family, I grew up in a Republican family, so I'm very aware of what both sides of the fence means. So I was well versed in what it meant to be a Democrat and a Republican from a real young age. But the fact is, it is possible for us to win in Indiana. We will win in Indiana again, but we're not going to win if we keep taking politically unpopular positions. If we're taking a side on an issue that we don't need to take, and it's a bad side politically speaking, we're not doing our jobs.
Mayor, can you hold through a quick break?
Sure. Thanks, Gary.
All right, this is the part of the SnydeReport where we thank our sponsors, and we have a growing list. So let's start with Robin Winston. Robin has been there when we first sent out our first email, 147 subscribers. We're now over 108,000. So thank you, Robin Winston, and helping us get the podcast going in the right direction. Next up is our good friend, former Congresswoman Jill Long Thompson. Her book, Across the Aisle, Why Bipartisanship Works for America. Get that anywhere you buy your books. Also, former two-term governor, two-term U.S. Senator Evan Bayh. Evan has been a sponsor of the newsletter, now jumps on board with the podcast. Congressman Andre Carson. Congressman Carson has been there from the start on the newsletter. We're glad to have him now. He needs your help to win re-election next year. So make sure you support Congressman Carson. Next up, State Representative Cherish Pryor. Cherish has been there from the start on the newsletter, joining us on the podcast now. So is State Senator Greg Taylor. I want to thank Senator Taylor for all of his support through the years. Next, we have a couple of new sponsors. First up is Indiana Citizen. You want to check out their new project, One Heartbeat Away. Do Christian nationalists have an agenda for Indiana? You know, all you have to do is look at the lieutenant governorship and you can see right away that they do. So thank you, Indiana Citizen. Next up is Jump Laundry. You can visit them at jumplaundry.com. They have home pickup. They do your dry cleaning, wash and fold with, I might add, no judgments, and next day service. So if you're in a crunch for time, you don't want to do your own laundry, get a hold of Jump Laundry at jumplaundry.com or at 317-740-5011. And they will take care of all of your laundry needs. All right, welcome back to the SnydeReport. I am your host, Gary Snyder. We are speaking with Hammond Mayor Thomas McDermott, or Tom as I call him.
I get called a
Tom.
lot of things. 22 years as mayor, you get called a lot. So I
I
like
can
Tom. I like
imagine.
Tom. Yeah.
One thing, I was interviewing Adam Kinzinger about a month and a
Mhm.
half ago.
Good for you, man.
And he mentioned, and I brought this up a little bit. He said Democrats need to come to the realization, do you want to be ideologically pure or do you want to win?
Look at us.
And from where I'm sitting right now, we want to be ideologically pure.
I agree with you on that. I think that's the problem in Indiana is there are elements of the Indiana Democratic Party that want to be ideologically pure. I agree. That's not realistic, and that's not necessarily going to win elections. But you feel good about yourself.
Right. You know, it's a nice post on Facebook. I ran for, but did you win?
No, I lost, but I
trust
feel
me,
good about the positions I took.
Trust me, I've run and I've lost,
Mhm.
but I've taken positions that I think most Hoosiers want or most Hoosiers support. Unfortunately, I think in Indiana, Democrats are seen through the lens of the West Coast and the East Coast. And
I agree with you, Gary.
I think a lot of, I don't want to say our elected Democrats, but I'm going to put some of them in there, at least because most elected Democrats come from places like Bloomington or Indianapolis or South Bend or Fort Wayne, where being seen through the lens of the East Coast or the West Coast may work. But when they are the faces of the Democrat elected Democrats in Indiana, that hurts the rest of us that are trying to win in places like Huntington or Rushville, or you can pick any rural town around Indiana.
Who do you think is the face of the Democratic Party in Indiana now, in your opinion?
You know,
Because that's
I
a good question, isn't it?
yeah, I think that what I see is, Shelley Yoder's out there front and center.
Hmm.
You have JD
Yeah,
Ford.
yeah. They
I
have
mean,
legislators, right?
you have, Maureen
They have
Bauer up
mayors
at,
like me in our
yeah,
little areas. Yeah, Maureen Bowers, excellent. I
yeah.
agree.
But,
You know,
and I think that maybe sometimes they are seen as, I'm not going to, they are seen through the lenses of the East or the West Coast. And that's what I think we run into trouble.
I think you're right on that. Oh, and by the way, everybody we mentioned, I think is awesome.
Yeah, they're
One of
great,
the problems
great
with the
representatives.
legislature, yeah, but one of the problems with the legislature is you find yourself in awkward positions because you vote as a group over there.
Hmm.
So sometimes you're voting on issues that aren't necessarily the most important issue to you, but you got to vote with the rest of the team, and it puts you in positions, that the senator yoders will find themselves in positions that they didn't necessarily want to talk about, but they had no choice. But it's weird that my whole career growing up, I always knew who the boss of the party was. It was either Evan Bayh or it was Joe
Hmm.
Donnelly or it was, John Gregg for a while. But like, that's one of the problems right now, Gary, is there's no statewide figure that we could really point to and say, that's the boss right there.
Right.
Like that's a problem. I mean, in the Republican Party, they all work for the governor, quite frankly, and that's the leader of the party. And so we need to find that person in Indiana, and we need to support that person, and maybe we'll start doing better in the elections.
Do you think that the mayors like yourself or Brandon, the mayor down in Terre Haute,
Uh-huh.
or Sharon
Stephanie,
Tucker in Fort
Sharon
Wayne,
Tucker,
you
right?
can go down the line.
Joe
Why
Hogsett in Indy.
why are they not getting as much, and yourself,
Mm-hmm.
publicity statewide as maybe some of the state representative or state senators?
I think that's a good question. First off, state reps and state senators know a lot of people across the state because they're down there in the state house working with people from all parts of the state. Whereas mayors are mostly in their neighborhoods. Like I'm well known in the region, but when I get outside of the region, it's a lot different. I think mayors are important personally because we have a lot of campaign money. Like usually,
Right.
if you're a mayor, you could raise good amounts of money as opposed to legislators are a lot more limited like that. Mayors also have a team of people usually that could help, get the message out and stuff like that. So, we have definitely good core mayors in Indiana, Democratic mayors, and obviously we have a minority of Democrats that are excellent. The ones that are there are top notch. The 1/3 we do have, they're great. So I think we do have a solid bench, though, honestly, Gary, and then there's candidates like yourself, amazing candidates that come along. And obviously, the year we ran, we had a really fun ticket, not a lot of success, but we all knew each other well. I had a lot of good times in 2022 running around the state with you, Gary. And I thought our team did really well. It didn't translate into victories, but I think we had a lot of lifelong friendships made. And I'm not done. I don't think you're done. By the way, you started the Snyder Report back then too, right?
That's it. I mean,
I know.
we
I
go out
started
to over
Lockpod.
108,000 people every day.
That's awesome,
And
man.
we have a very large open rate. The
Hmm.
podcast is growing. We switch from just doing audio to video, but how do we get more Democrats to follow your advice? Keep
About
losing?
moderation. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think what needs to happen is somebody like you or me or Joe Donnelly, another moderate, somebody like that's got to win and then become the leader of the party and then bring people to the center. Because there's moderate Republicans and then there's total right wing Republicans. They're allow for moderation in their party. They don't exercise somebody because they're a moderate or because they're a total right winger. But here we are. We feel a lot of pressure. I think you and I feel a lot of pressure in the Democratic Party to swing further and further to the left. And that's certainly not the answer if we intend to be successful in the state of Indiana. That's certainly not the answer. The answer, Gary, is people on the far left need to come to where we are. And the only way that we could solve this is to win elections. So if a guy like me runs, a guy like you runs, hopefully one of us wins, and we can start pulling the rest of the party our way.
Anything else you want to talk about? I know you're pressed for time. Obviously, you're the mayor of a city.
I'm proud of you, and I'm happy. I'm proud of you, and I'm happy for you. You know, you've done a lot of great work. I think that when you run like for an office like you did, and it doesn't go the way you wanted it to go, you could either like walk away and never get involved again, or you could keep on plugging away. And I see Gary Snyder still plugging away. I think that speaks a lot about who you are as a person, man. So congratulations on this great show. I know Democrats across the state that watch every single episode. I watch a lot of them, and I just wanted to say, awesome job. Keep up the great work. And this certainly helps, Gary, is getting the message out there and getting our voters to the polls to support good candidates.
Well,
So
one
thank you very
podcast
much.
I watch quite a bit is yours, Left of Center.
Thank
So
you. I
just tell
appreciate it.
people a little bit about yours, and maybe we can plug it a little here.
Sure, mutual. Left of Center podcast. It's called Lock Pod, Left of Center podcast. It's on Tuesdays and Fridays live on Facebook, YouTube, all those channels. And it's also, you could stream it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the places you can get your normal podcast. So Left of Center podcast, Tuesdays and
And
Fridays.
it was a sponsor of our newsletter for a while, so thank you for that
Early
support.
on. I appreciate it. I still support you, Gary, and I will support you again.
Obviously.
But like, I think you're doing, yeah, no, I'm real proud of what you're doing over there, and you do a great job. I know you and I ran into each other again for the first time in a while when I was in Allen County, and
Mhm.
I love that part of the state. I think you're doing great work out there, and I appreciate it personally. So thank you very much for
Well, I
inviting me on your show,
appreciate it,
Gary.
and I want to thank you for your time today. I'm Gary Snyder. He is not. He is Hammond Mayor Thomas McDermott. This is the Snide Report, and we are out.